Today we're going to discuss another masterpiece by Timothy Piatkowski, my favorite Tremboloni researcher. This research article is called "You Could Try This Compound, but It Might Send You Nuts: How Steroid Suppliers Perceive the Underground Market and Their Hybrid Role Within It." Published in Deviant Behavior on July 2nd, 2024, so that's only a couple days ago. And besides Timothy Piatkowski, this research article was also performed by Luke Cox, James McVeigh, an independent researcher residing in Bangkok, Thailand, Steve Vigorous. Vigorous Steve here. After being published in Muscular Development about 2 years back, before they decided to close up shop and discontinue their magazine, I'm now a contributing published author in this research article, which we're going to discuss in this video. Timothy Piatkowski asked me a few months ago to share my insights into the purchase of performance-enhancing drugs online and how steroid suppliers might offer additional usage advice to the consumers who buy the steroids from them. I recently had a podcast with convicted steroid kingpin Ryan Root, who also explained he was often giving usage advice to his customers when he was still in the underground lab business. And nowadays he's giving safe and sound advice regarding hormone optimization through the TRT clinic that he's working with. I'll link that podcast at the end of this video. So let's go through the research paper together, and as usual, you can find the full citation down below in case you want to read the entire thing. Contributing authors are Timothy Piatkowski, Luke Cox, James McVeigh, and Steve Vigorous. Apparently, Vigorous Steve cannot be an author, that's just a stage name for here on YouTube. Published on July 2nd, 2024, and as mentioned before, the title is "You Could Try This Compound, but It Might Send You Nuts: How Steroid Suppliers Perceive the Underground Market and Their Hybrid Role Within It." Let's get started by reading through the introduction, shall we? Many image and performance-enhancing drugs, such as anabolic androgenic steroids, were originally developed for medical purposes. However, many are illicitly manufactured. Off-label consumption of these substances is predominantly facilitated through illegal channels, particularly with the rise of online markets. Although researchers have examined the experiences of individuals involved in homebrewing and local market supply in the United States and United Kingdom, further research is necessary to explore and understand supply dynamics in other contexts and geographical locations. The practices of people who use AAS vary depending on their motivations, prior knowledge, cultural embeddedness within the AAS communities, and their experiences. People who use AAS typically have a limited understanding of the AAS before initiating their use, often relying on information obtained from peers and suppliers, as well as drug coaches, which may sometimes be inadequate. Drug suppliers, often acting as peers, may also provide information and advice at the point of sale. So before you buy something, you can get some advice free of charge. Thus, suppliers wear multiple hats and switch between these various and somewhat contrasting roles depending on the situation. Given that AAS populations are also notoriously difficult to reach, we're all hidden away somewhere. We only come out at night because otherwise we look way too big, too large and in charge, contrasting with general population. Suppliers can offer unique insights into consumer interaction and market trends, revealing emerging patterns of supply. I'm sure the steroid suppliers can all tell you that Trembolone has increased in popularity, Halotestin has increased in popularity, and generic GH has also increased in popularity. I mean, who's to blame for all of that? Scrolling down a little bit further, the risks of image and performance-enhancing drugs range from the physical, as in hypertension, reproductive issues, and bloodborne virus transmission. Well, maybe only if you're sharing needles. I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that. To the psychosocial, as in aggression and depression. However, coaches and educators focusing on image and performance-enhancing drugs need to balance and integrate harm reduction into educational content and thus often face challenges. Tell me about it. I mean, the resistance that I get from the community just by talking about this openly, astronomical. While coaches and educators attract viewers and clients by offering dosage protocols, the reality is that consent addressing health complications may garner minimal attention compared to discussion on specific, hyped image and performance-enhancing drugs like Trembolone. Again, Timothy Piatkowski is my favorite Trembolone researcher. And this is the main challenge of all the steroid educators out there. We try to steer you in the direction of risk mitigation and harm reduction while making you aware of the potential health complications that face you when you start abusing these kinds of drugs. But if you don't put Trembolone in the title, then you get no views. Reading on a little bit onwards, acknowledging the importance of peers within drug use and the scarcity of research focusing on suppliers' role within this discussion, it appears essential to explore how peer suppliers shape perception and behaviors. Then this is basically the entire setup of this research article. We wanted to know how steroid suppliers can influence and educate and transfer harm reduction and risk mitigation strategies to their consumers, because most of it is all happening behind anonymity, right? The steroid suppliers are anonymous and the customers are anonymous as well. And maybe because all of this is happening behind the comforts of anonymity, a lot of the consumers feel more comfortable to ask questions, explain their unique situation regarding their individual use, instead of discussing this with a doctor or even discussing this with a steroid educator like myself, right? A lot of guys prefer to stay anonymous and discuss this with their anonymous steroid dealer instead. And after a quick review of their planned cycle, getting some quality advice in the process, fingers crossed, at the same time they can start purchasing the drugs that they want to run as soon as it arrives. So how's this different from going to a prescribing physician who will give you advice for the medications that you're going to need to use and then also write your prescription so you can purchase those medications right as you leave the door? And it's pretty much the same, albeit that some are illicit drugs and the other ones are prescription drugs. But the illicit drugs are also prescription drugs, but you're using them for off-label purposes. And here in the theoretical framing, we mentioned that drawing on this theoretical approach, drug supply does not necessarily align with conventional perception of illicit drug trafficking, but as means of aiding others in the community or supporting personal use. That's the story of my life. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was helping another guy get his hormone prescription because nobody else was going to give him his hormone prescription, because the medical community is not in favor of a man with a little bit higher than 230 nanograms per deciliter, right? So he had to take matters into his own hands, and I'm empowering him. Personally, I don't see anything wrong with that, but the law might feel different. As extent work suggests, these evolving trends have led to a small-scale operations involving single actors or small groups being commonplace amongst drug suppliers. These types of transactions are typically guided by subcultural norms and social trust, right? I wash your back, you wash mine, I give you the money and you give me the drugs. Thank you very much. With friendships often being essential for gaining access, right? We all need a way in. This is why steroid suppliers and sources are never ever public, and we shouldn't discuss these sources in public either. YouTube is not a fucking source board, you idiots. In this context, drug suppliers are individuals who blur lines between conventional behavior and criminal activity, actively navigating their drug use and supply within an otherwise lawful lifestyle. Drug suppliers, who often provide advice and guidance at the point of sale, offer a unique perspective on consumer interactions and market trends. Their intimate understanding of the market can inform researchers and harm reduction practitioners about consumer behaviors and emerging patterns. Using this theoretical framework, we aimed to provide insights into how drug suppliers perceive the current market and their roles within it. And while any steroid educator can attest to this, we're in direct contact with the steroid suppliers. When the steroid supplier says that a particular compound XYZ, the sales are going up, now me as a steroid educator can start making a particular video on how to use it safer, which will also facilitate sales. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. When I started talking about Trenbolone, sales went up. And when I started talking about Increlex, the sales went up. And when I hear a particular steroid supplier talk about sales going up, but I haven't made a video about it recently, guess what? I'm going to make educational content about compound XYZ. And you will start seeing this in a couple weeks from now. As soon as I release a video comparing mirabegron to clenbuterol and albuterol, mirabegron will start appearing on steroid suppliers' product list. And as the demand for mirabegron is increasing, because it is a better fat burner compared to clenbuterol or albuterol, that the educational content about mirabegron, as the sales increase, will start to increase as well, right? So this, in this sense, we kind of work hand in hand between the steroid suppliers and the steroid educators, because if sales go up, the demand for educational content also goes up. And here in the methods, materials, and data collection and data analysis, we, the authors, explain how the interviews amongst 4 Australian-based drug suppliers were conducted, and obviously the identity of these drug suppliers will remain completely anonymous. Don't even ask. So without further ado, here are the results. There's definitely been a spike in trend sales. Cultural narratives driving supply. Is that my fault for doing a 1-hour deep dive on Trenbolone? I don't think so. Trenbolone will always be a good seller and will always be everybody's favorite, although everybody has a love-hate relationship with the Trenbolone sandwich, myself included. The demand for specific types of AAS within the black market highlights the significant influence of cultural narratives on consumer behavior. Messages propagated through various channels, including online forums and social media, shape perceptions of desirability and efficacy regarding certain substances. So regardless of where you get your information from, it kind of depends how the message is conveyed. This landscape creates a scenario where potential consumers are not only aware of, but actively seek out specific AAS based on their reputed potency and effects. Suppliers reported that they were approached and asked for specific types of drugs, such as the Trenbolone sandwich. Given Trenbolone's reputation as a potent and powerful AAS, it appears that buyers are influenced by messages propagated the desirability of acquiring Trenbolone, leading them to actively seek it out. Well, send me to jail. But before you send me away for life, let's continue with a couple quotes from the interviewed steroid suppliers. Interviewee 1, and I quote, "Look, I'll have people come up to me and say, 'Hey, can I?' And they'll give me their name, shipping address, and they'll just add 3 Tren. I mean, people hear about these products and they think they sound cool because they do. You know, check drops are really cool. Trenbolone is really cool. Halotestin, you know, all these things are all popular. I'm not really sure about check drops being cool and popular, but Halotestin and Trenbolone, due to myself and Tyan Clark, have become very, very popular. And again, Trenbolone is always popular, albeit that check drops and Halotestin might be terrible for your liver if abused, and Trenbolone also terrible for your liver, so don't even try. And this is a very colorful quote from interviewee 2. "Social media, like the bloody trend twins, micro-celebrities. Even just people like I've been walking through the streets, and I've had young dudes like in their teens go like, dudes, like how much trend are you running?" Because they just know friends and they think, oh, anybody that's got a little bit of muscle on them must be on trend. And there's definitely been a spike in trend sales because of them or other influencers talking about it for sure. I mean, if you want guaranteed views, you have to talk about Trenbolone. This is why I talked about Trenbolone, and apparently that's spiking trend sales. But well, if you're the trend twins, the trend is always in your name, and it doesn't matter which of the twins are in the news. It's always about the Trenbolone sandwich facilitating views. Do the trend twins have a discount code for the particular brand of Trenbolone? Right, Trend Twins 10, Trend Twins 20. That would be hilarious. Interviewee 4, at the point of sale. "Yeah, you could try this compound, but it might send you nuts." This is where the quote of the research article is coming from. And then he did buy Trenbolone and, you know, fought everybody, 2 or 3 people in 1 week. So maybe Trenbolone was not suitable for this customer. He purchased these drugs instead of food because he was on Centrelink, social service financial support. And then the next thing he wanted to try was DHB, dihydroboldenone. Then after DHB, he wanted to try methyltrianolone. And then that's where I stepped in. So you see here that even the drug suppliers, after one point or another, they kind of get concerned for the consumers. They go from Trenbolone to DHB to methyltren to Halotestin. They're basically all over the place. And at one point, these drug suppliers said, "Hey, buddy, enough's enough. Why don't you go on a cruise and clean out and wisen the fuck up?" I mean, as a former bodybuilding coach, the signs are very easy to spot. People tend to be all over the place unless they have a clear goal to work towards, and they end up running shit for the sake of running shit. And I'm sure steroid suppliers see the exact same thing on a daily basis because they're selling to thousands of people, whereas bodybuilding coaches maybe coach sub 100 people at a time over the month, right? So the steroid suppliers probably see this stuff all the time. They see the single customer go from Nandrolone to Trenbolone to Trestalone to DHB back to Mint to whatever, and after a while they have to pull the plug because many of the customers are good for a couple $1,000s every single year. And these steroid suppliers have a vested interest to keep their customers happy and healthy because otherwise they will not be recurring because they get themselves into the hospital and then have to pay the hospital bill instead of buying more steroids. All right, so many steroid suppliers that I know, they have a vested interest to keep their customers healthy, right? And not make them buy too much at a time, and certainly not make these crazy combinations that some people are after, which have no rhyme or reason, no intelligent cycle design, no consensus for harm reduction or risk mitigation, just a boatload of compounds stacked together at very high dosages. This is now becoming a liability, right? When the customer is in the hospital in organ failure, and at one point they're going to go through their emails and then see, hey, they bought their steroids from this supplier, and now this supplier is on the monitoring program, right, from the police, obviously. So I know many steroid suppliers would say at one point or another, they pull the plug and say, this is probably not a good idea. Why don't you go back to a cruise? Why don't you become a little bit more risk averse and start designing your cycles a little bit more intelligently by following these easy steps? Because if the customer stays happy and healthy, they come back for more and more and more, and you build a long-lasting relationship where the steroid supplier, is guaranteed for thousands of dollars every single year. I mean, ultimately, what we want, the steroid educators and the steroid suppliers, is that the users, whether we give them advice or other people sell them the product, that the users walk away with a good experience, don't have any side effects, don't have any terrible problems along the way, and also have a long-term outcome that is successful by using ancillaries and preventative measures, again, to keep the risk and the harm at bay. I know, because many of these steroid suppliers and online sources are actually watching this YouTube channel, and then slowly but steadily the information kind of trickles downwards to their consumers, because the consumers prefer to remain anonymous, don't want to hire a drug coach or schedule a consultation or go to the forums or get their information elsewhere. They solely want to talk to the drug supplier, the online source, and get their information there at the point of sale before they place an order. I mean, why do you think so many of these steroid sources are now having ancillaries on their product list? It's not by accident. It's because educators like me keep hammering on the ancillaries to keep the consumers healthy. Although there's plenty of steroid sources out there, mostly patrolling the online steroid forums, who will just try to upsell and upsell and upsell to their customers to squeeze the last little bit of Bitcoin out of them. And these customers never come back because they obviously get health complications because they megadose particular compounds or a stack of compounds, and probably the quality of the products were also subpar, right? So if that ever happened to you, share your horror stories down below in the comment section. I'm sure people would love to hear about it. Just keep in mind, if you do get your advice from an online source, a steroid supplier, that high quality advice is never free or seldom free. It's often calculated into the price of the products that you're interested in, that you want to buy. Obviously, these steroid suppliers, if they're messaging you a lot with all of these annoying questions that you can simply answer yourself by watching this YouTube channel, they need a little bit of ROI on the time spent messaging you and answering your questions. So if Primobolan is $36 per ampule and you're asking your source a boatload of questions, just pay up. Just pay up, or go to another source that has the exact same Bayarimobolan for $16, but doesn't give you any advice regarding risk mitigation and personal use and mitigating health complications in the short and long term, but then hire a drug coach and you siphon the difference of the product into a service, right? You have to look at it this way. Some sources are just a little bit more expensive than others, but they also offer solid and sound advice. And if you don't want advice, you just want a cheap price, you want the maximum discount, then don't ask any questions. And it's basically explained here. If they want more information, they can book a fucking consult. And I added in the fucking so you guys know what I mean. Hybrid roles in supply and distribution. All suppliers also provided peer-led harm reduction advice, whether in their capacity as a supplier peer or in the dual role as a professional drug coach. And Timothy Piatkowski, you need to write this a little bit easier so I can present it here on YouTube better. Right, for the next review paper that we're going to do, let's write it in a way that I can read it out loud. Super easy for a YouTube video so you can get the views and funding for more research. Win-win. While it is currently unclear which aspects of these roles take priority, there is a merging of messages. This indicates a multifaceted approach to harm reduction within AES community and substantiates extant work around the evolution of specific drug coaching. This underscores the necessity of reputable suppliers to be showcased, better ensuring people who use AES attain access to the legitimate and quality product, reducing the potential of health harms presented through fake and counterfeit anabolic androgenic steroids. Let's highlight a couple more quotes because they're fun and interesting to read. Interview 1. I think from the user side, I don't think it's so much being an education thing, but maybe more of the availability of testing and just being fed up with quality gear. Well, it's very problematic in Australia, but it's not really the case in other parts of the world. I mean, I have access to mostly pharmaceuticals. So Australians, just move over, right? Go do your steroid vacation over here in Thailand. And interview 2 says, I think if you're getting free information off Reddit, online forums, or social media like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, man, that's a terrible place for steroid advice. It's probably best to take it all with a grain of salt. But something like, as I said, drug coach XYZ, probably Vigorous Steve, or another drug coach for the sake of $50 to $200 a month. Well, that's probably not me. I charge way more than $200 per month. But hey, that's a nice start to have all those resources at your fingertips, right? So you get your steroids from your steroid supplier and your steroid advice from your online drug coach, right? Both cost money, but both can get you started and keep you healthy, right? Unless you throw the kitchen sink at it, but that's on your own discretion. And then interview 4 kind of seals the deal for me. You do have the issue with coaches and picking the good from the bad as well. I think there's people, as you would have seen on Instagram, getting on the air, talking about not doing cycles of less than 2 grams, stuff like that, and unnecessary amounts. They're commending that people do bloody 2 to 3 grams a week. And while that's good for sales, it's not good for health, right? It might be required at the highest level, IFBB pros or top-level amateurs that are soon to be turning pros or want to turn pro. But for the beginners, right, for the guys who are just getting started, 2 to 3 grams a week, certainly not required. I did it in the past after a multitude of years of running steroids, various cycles, and now I reduce the dosages quite substantially, and hopefully you guys can learn something from that as well. And even though a steroid supplier would salivate at you buying 30 grams of gear for your 10-week cycle, it's probably not in their vested interest because you will not come back for more because you have terrible health complications, and those hospital bills, very expensive. Anyway, there's a lot more to this study. You can find the citation down below in case you want to read it for yourself. I think this video is already way too long, so let's just wrap it up here. Long story short, didn't read or didn't watch in this case, wherever you get your information from. It's not the full story, whether that's my YouTube channel, the online forums, TikTok, your steroid supplier, right? Do additional research. This is why I always cite all of the videos, or at least nowadays, maybe not in the past, but all of my deep dives are fully cited for you to do additional research. Whether you do that or not, that's your responsibility. You decide to purchase these steroids, these performance-enhancing drugs. You decide to take these performance-enhancing drugs. So it's your decision to do the additional research. Stay safe, stay healthy in the short term and the long term, right? I think some steroid suppliers can give you good advice. Will it be the best advice? I'm not entirely sure. In the end, they have financial incentive to potentially upsell you, but also financial incentive to keep you around for very long periods of time. So I would stick with an online steroid source that only sells pharmaceuticals. Why? Because with pharmaceuticals, there's third-party testing, quality control, there's limited products that you can actually purchase, and thus you don't get yourself into trouble because you want to try the DHB with the mint and the check drops all at the same time, right? Handicap yourself. Go with a steroid supplier that only sells pharmaceutical grades. All right, I'll leave it here. Again, the citation is down below. Thank you so much, Timothy Piatkowski, Luke Cox, and James McVeigh for allowing me to contribute to this research article. More in the making. Stay tuned, right? Timothy Piatkowski is on a mission to get all of these research papers documented. Do us a solid and fill out the drug coaching survey of 2024. We're trying to get as many drug coaches in this sample size for the best publication sometime at the end of this year. Your contribution will be highly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok. It's Vigorous Steve. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. Hey, you could try this frontal bicep, but it might send you nuts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.